Good afternoon and welcome to the April 6th meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. Sheila, may we have roll?
Commissioner Chan. Commissioner Ibrahimian.
Present.
Commissioner Foley.
Present.
Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Yao.
Present.
Second item, Sheila.
Consider minutes of the February 2nd meeting.
Any changes to the minutes?
Mr. President Foley, I would suggest to table the minutes for the next meeting since I haven't had a chance to review that. And by discussion with other commissioners, it seems like some of them haven't had a chance to review it either. Is that okay?
Is there a motion for that?
I move to table the minutes for the next meeting.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Next item.
Item 3, employee recognition.
I'd like to ask Pat Riley to step forward, please.
President Foley, Commissioners. I'm Pat Riley, Electrical Superintendent. Last year about this time, myself and several of the folks sitting out in the audience were in Indianapolis at the completion of the Lineman's Rodeo there at the awards banquet. At the beginning of the banquet, a gentleman named Andy Price got up and did a presentation of some Hall of Fame awards to some gentlemen that they had deemed worthy of induction to that hall. A few of us there looked at each other and said, we got to get Randy into this thing. Mr. Randy States has been with Glendale since 1996, and that's just the latest chapter in his career. Prior to that, he spent over 30 years with with LADWP as a lineman, troubleman, rising up to the rank of training superintendent. Prior to that, he came from Niagara Mohawk Power back in Buffalo, New York, which he started in the early 1950s. Randy has over 58 years of experience in the industry. He came to us when we were implementing our cross-training program for our linemen and cable splicers to help us get that program going, and has been with us ever since and in guiding us in our training needs and helping us in all those aspects. Randy is one of the people that is most dedicated to this line of work. He is known throughout the industry in California. He has promoted the profession to a degree that I have never seen, and has supported our organization his entire time here. So back in about October, we submitted an essay to the Lineman's Hall of Fame, accompanied by signatures from every journey level employee in the organization. Waited several months and didn't hear anything back, but finally, I believe it was late January, I got a call from Mr. Price telling me that he had read the essay, was impressed with all the signatures, and Randy would, in fact, be one of those selected for the Lineman's Hall of Fame. He was one of 16 nominees nationwide, and 6 were chosen. So this past about 2-3 weeks ago, the Lineman Hall of Fame was, the International Lineman's Rodeo was being held in Austin, Texas. We didn't have plans to go, but that's when we found out Randy was going to be inducted at those proceedings. So we went back, and at that time, at the beginning of the award ceremony for this year's rodeo, Randy was awarded with his induction into the Lineman Hall of Fame. This is that award. I had a copy made for us to keep and hold forever, as he has his own. I don't want to take it from him. It says the International Lineman's Hall of Fame inductees 2008, Randy States, and along with Randy, Alan E. Drew, Thomas M. Shoemaker, Andrew B. Freeman, Bill Boyle, and George Westinghouse. So some very influential people in the industry in that group. And it's my great pleasure to present Mr. Randy States. Congratulations again. Anything to say?
Oh, not really. No, this is really nice. I know a couple of these people on here, not George Westinghouse, but some of the other guys I do, and it was a real treat to meet them. One, it took a great part in writing Lyman's Abelman's Handbook. It's the Bible of line work across the United States, and man who invented and started the Northwest College for linemen. Very nice. And I'd like you to meet my family. My wife, Betty. My son, Gary. My son, Chad. My daughter, Donna.
Wow.
And my grandson, Max. It's a real treat, and when the secretary of the organization said that I could request another trophy, this is the other one I got mine, that they would build it, they would do it, and that it would stay in Glendale's office, in Pat's office, and I thought that was pretty nice, because this was a whole district project. Everybody took part in it. They all had to sign a paper supporting Pat, and it's been a real district project. And so this will stay in the office, and there's a tape that goes with it. And it's all been a great experience. I love it. I love being a part of it. I love being a part of teaching apprentices. I love it. And we would like to hire some more, but Pat says no. Glenn,
Randy,
thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
We're honored, and pleased to have Randy as part of our team and organization. The only thing I ask Randy is I want one of these in my office too. So,
Pat,
so congratulations.
thank you. This is one of our top people. And Ramon, I don't see Ramon here tonight, but Ramon reports to him, and they all, well, Pat's in there somewhere. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to add, excuse me, Randall. I'm an electrical engineer and working in Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and I've worked with linemen in my career, and I have the utmost respect and regard for the profession, and I want to congratulate you and thank you very much for just all those years of dedication.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I think on behalf of the commission as a whole, we'd all thank you for your years of service and the work you did, and also to bring this award or earn this award for everybody here in Glendale, not just yourself. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And in the duration of time you've served not only this city, but the entire industry by working in different communities and with your mentoring efforts. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a real treat, I'll tell you.
And how about my mom that has celebrated 58 years of marriage? Putting up with him.
Every family has one. Mine's
I got it from you.
Thank you. Sheila, next item.
Item 4, reports information. 4A, Glenn Steiger. First report is strategic planning update.
While we're waiting for Sheila to get the PowerPoint up and running, what I'd like to do today is give you an update on our strategic plan. As you recall, I think it was 2 months ago, I gave you a draft strategic plan. Well, the draft has now become our formalized permanent strategic plan. And today what I'd like to do is run through it quickly, very, very quickly, because you've seen it. What I'm going to do is just review the goals, the key result areas, because we have solidified them. And this is what we'll be working from for the next 5+ years. So I thought it would be worthwhile for you to see what we've done. In the meantime, what we have prepared for all of our employees and every other of our stakeholders is this summary of our strategic plan, which outlines all of our trends, stakeholders, threats and opportunities, but most importantly, shows the key result areas that we've outlined and the goals that go along with them. What I'm going to do today is, in a second here, I'm going to go through the specifics for each goal so that you get a much better understanding of what it is that we're going to be doing for the next 5 years. But as I mentioned when we put the draft presentation together, this was a group effort. It was a 9-month effort, and it included most of the employees of GWP, which is what we're very, very proud of, because at this point we now have a much better sense of ownership by GWP employees. So Sheila, you know what? I can do it from over there. I can make your light. What I'd like to do is I will run through this presentation quickly, as I said, but this is the presentation that we gave to City Council, that we've given now to every employee of GWP. So this is the presentation that includes all of our strategic planning data. And I'll go through this one quickly. The mayor usually gives a little brief introduction, but we'll skip it for today. And suffice it to say that he's pleased with GWP. This is how we did the process. If you recall, I explained how we went from global trends right on down to the GWP marketplace. This one? Here we go. And the trends, of course, were economic uncertainty, increasing growth, higher standard of living, increasing concern for human health and the environment, increasing climate change, workforce issues, safety and security issues, and increasing maintenance, repair, replacement of our infrastructure. This chart is all telling. In fact, this is all of the stakeholders that we identified that GWP interfaces with, in many cases on a daily basis, and you'll find yourselves in there as part of the regulators within Glendale. Now, of course, you're not a regulatory body by definition, but the fact that that we rely on your advice and your concurrence, in that regard, you are a regulator. So this is a very interesting map. It's in the brochure that I handed out, and I won't go through it all, but it says an awful lot about who GWP interfaces with and how we've prioritized those interfaces. These are, as we categorize threats, and the biggest single threat right now is that our customers could experience extreme financial hardship and resulting in GWP revenue loss. In that case, that's a double-edged sword in that it hurts our customers and it hurts GWP. And then there's a number of other threats that we've identified in here that we've developed strategies around. And as I say, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly, but these are the threats. Again, they're included in there. On the opportunity side, conservation of water and energy, recycled water, additional solar application, our initiative into AMI, or smart grid, as it's known. We utilize more green energy and reduce our carbon footprint. We sell more power outside of the city, resulting in additional revenue for the city. We reduce our peak loads. That's a very, very important opportunity for us. We receive positive publicity and support. One of the threats is negative publicity. So obviously an opportunity is to continue to get positive publicity. And then continue to look at future projects through collaboration with other utilities, primarily through our affiliation with SCAPA, the Southern California Public Power Authority. And then utilizing advanced technologies, not only with smart grid, but in other areas too, to potentially create new business opportunities. And a very good example of that would be the utilization of our fiber optic system. This, again, is a summary of those threats and opportunities categorized in quadrants by competitors, customers, resources, and regulators. And again, we've gone through this, so it's something that is in the brochure to take a look at. So as we narrowed down the overall environment that we work in, the threats and opportunities and the trends, then we came up with these priorities. Water supply, to maximize production of water resources. Power supply, ensure reliable power supply under severe legislative and regulatory controls and restrictions, and through a portfolio of resources that includes a reconfigured Grayson power plant. Customer service, achieve high customer service satisfaction level by increasing the value of all GWP programs and services. Rates are very, very important. Achieve water and electric rates that are at the median of comparable utilities in Southern California. We talked about infrastructure. Achieve the highest achievable service reliability by continuously improving and maintaining our physical plant, electric, and water facilities. Workforce. We talked about the importance of having the workforce as an integral part of our plan. It's also important to make sure that our workforce is motivated and generally satisfied in doing the work that we have here. Utilize new and existing information systems and technologies that reduce our costs, enhance customer service, and increase operational effectiveness. Collaboration with other city departments and all of our stakeholders within Glendale. And we know that we need to do more and more to collaborate on a daily basis to find new synergies and new efficiencies in doing work. Legislation and regulation. Influence local, state, and federal legislation and regulations to benefit our operations. And in that particular case, we need to formulate a legislative strategy as we move forward. So how does this all come together in a plan through our mission, vision, values, our key result areas, goals, initiatives, and how we keep score? The mission, simply to be your trusted community utility. The word trust is very, very important. Our vision, to deliver reliable, high-quality, environmentally sensitive, and sustainable water and power services to our customers in a caring and cost-competitive manner while creating a stimulating and rewarding work experience for our employees. And again, it's a balance between providing the highest level of customer service while creating a stimulating and rewarding workforce, a balance between customers and employees. Our values, and as I've said numerous times to our employees, this is very interesting because many of these values came out of the discussions we had with our own employees in workshops over the course of the last 5 or 6 months. But clearly, top value is dedication to customer service. That's why we're here. Trustworthy and respectful, that word trust again. Ownership. It's important that every one of us, particularly the employees at GWP, own what we do. That's why it was so important to have as many of our employees participate in the development of this plan. Teamwork. Do it right came right out of our discussions with employees. Many employees said over and over again, you know, we really need to do things right the first time so we don't have to go out and do it again. That's a very important value. And finally, continuous improvement. So these are the values that provide the bedrock for what it is that we do. So the key result areas look a whole lot like those priorities that I just mentioned, and in fact, they are. And so the key result areas provide the foundation for the plan itself, and this essentially is the plan. Under water supply, produce 3,856 acre-feet per year from the Verdugo Basin by the end of the planning horizon. Serve 2,500 acre-feet per year of recycled water by 2013. Institute a 2.5% public benefit charge like like charge, to fund water conservation measures, because water conservation is becoming one of our most significant strategies and most significant priorities. Reduce water usage by 7% over the 2006 base year by 2014. On both water and power supply sides, it's very, very important that we have sustainable efficiency and conservation, not just intermittent efficiency, but sustainable. And so we've got to reduce the amount of water used on a sustainable basis. On the power supply side, same thing applies. Reduce electrical usage by 7%. Increase the GPP's Grayson power plant efficiency to less than 10,000 BTU heat rate by 2015. What that means, in so many words, is make that power plant much more efficient than it is today. Today, its heat rate is far above 10,000. As we get down below 10,000, it becomes a very efficient plant and one that can make additional revenue for GWP. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. That's a mandate within the state, as you're all aware, by AB 32. Achieve a balanced energy portfolio by 2020, which includes a 33% renewable portfolio standard for Glendale. And it also includes a much more balanced portfolio between the Grayson operation, renewables, and outside contracted and real-time energy procurement. And that goes right to the operation of our Energy Management Resources Group, which essentially is our trading floor under defined metrics, which means we're going to get a lot more aggressive in how we do daily trading. Under customer service, consistently achieve above-average customer satisfaction scores from the California Municipal Utility Association survey. The reason that one's important is because, as we all know, our customer expectations continue to change, and what is a good rating today is only average next year. So that's a challenge for us to continue to achieve above-average customer satisfaction. Ensure that all affected customers and public are consistently notified of all of our activities. One of the things we're doing along those lines is instituting a mass notification system, and that will go in very shortly. And that will notify people through phone call of if we're going to take them out of power for a while, or if we're going to do something that affects a certain block, or it could call every one of our customers at one time, essentially, with a notification. So that's a very important piece. One of our stretch goals, but we don't think it's too much of a stretch, is to restore minor power outages within 10 minutes and major outages within 20 minutes by 2014. When I presented that to our group of linemen last week, there were a few chuckles in the room. But then I reminded everyone that we are entering into an era of smart grid, which will allow us to do things far beyond what we do today. So electronically, we'll be able to reroute power where we don't have that ability today. And so that's not as much of a stretch as it appears. Under rates, as I mentioned, rates are a significant issue, always will be. So we want to establish water rates at or below 80% of the average rates in the area by 2014. We believe that's very achievable. The biggest single stretch goal we have, and probably the most serious goal that we have, is to reduce electric rates to 35% below Southern California Edison by 2014. Now, some people have read that to mean, reduce, I don't know how to go back here, but see if I can. I don't need to. Let's see, hang on. There we go. The goal here is to bring our rates below Edison because Edison is our major competitor. Our benchmark for rates is Southern California Edison. So what we're not saying is that we're going to reduce rates by 35%. What we are saying is we're going to do everything we can to stabilize rates, reduce where we can, and maintain hopefully a 35% differential between ourselves and our major competitor. That's important. Increase annual electrical wholesale net revenue to $10 million. What that means is as we make the Grayson plant more efficient, we'll be able to sell additional energy outside of Glendale and bring in net revenue. And what we're looking to do is increase that net revenue to $10 million by 2014. We believe that's very achievable. And then finally, reduce electrical system losses to less than 10% by 2014. Currently, our electrical system losses are quite a bit above 10%, which says a couple of things. One, it says our system is older, which is normal. But what it really says is we have other leakages in the system, and generally that means we have some theft of service issues, and we're sure that's the case. Every electric utility has theft of service issues. We're no different, and we think if we concentrate on finding those, we'll be able to tighten up the system, and that actually has a benefit. That actually has a benefit in that it saves revenue for us, and it certainly puts meters back into normal operation. Now, of course, our smart grid system will help in and of itself to find additional sources of theft of service. On the water infrastructure side, we want to reduce unaccounted for water there also, although we know that theft of service on the water side is not as significant as it is on the electric side, but there probably is an issue there too. We're going to replace all small meters within the next 2 years. And while we replace those meters, we'll be replacing them with automated meters as part of our smart grid system. We'll replace and rehabilitate 25 miles of pipe by 2014 and implement asset management by 2013. Now, the water system will look at asset management first, and then we will spread it to the electric side. And that's a significant change in how we look at the overall operation of our system and has major benefits to us. So that has a number of subset initiatives associated with it. On the power infrastructure side, we're going to reduce the number of outages to less than 25 per year, and that's June 2014. And again, that goes along with that stretch goal of 10 and 20-minute outages, as we talked about earlier. So when we put that all together, that's a significant improvement in reliability. We're going to upgrade our transmission system to 69 kV by 2014, which means that all of our transmission, which connects all of our substations within Glendale, will all be at 69 kV, a single voltage level. We don't have that today. The same at the distribution level, going to 12 kV from 4 kV. When that is all finished, those two projects will provide, again, significant increase in reliability in that all substations and circuits will be backed up at the same level, same voltage level. And today, since there's differential levels, we can't do that. Replace electrical and mechanical relays with state-of-the-art relays by 2018, and again, asset management on the electric side. Workforce, I mentioned how important it is to balance off what we do to make sure we have the proper motivation in our workforce. So we're going to continually improve job satisfaction, increase annual workforce availability to 87%. Right now, our overall availability is less than 80%, and that includes vacation time, personal time, sick time, all the time off that normal companies have, we have. But when you're less than 80% and you're trying to put crews together and just schedule work, it makes it less effective. So if we can get that to 87%, and by the way, at 87%, that still assumes that everyone takes all their vacation. Okay? So we're not saying people shouldn't take vacation. What we are saying is we need to tighten up other non-productive time. We want to also continue to have our vacancy rate at less than 5%. It hasn't been in the last few years. Again, when it's more than 5%, it impacts the efficiency of operation. We are going to standardize on the OSHA incident rate for looking at how we measure safety. And a 2.0 or less OSHA incident rate is very good. We're not there right now, but we also don't measure GWP's safety in terms of OSHA incident rate. This will standardize us with the industry. And then, of course, have zero preventable vehicle accidents, which is should be a given all the time. On the system side, achieve 100% AMI meter saturation. In other words, all of our meters, both electric and water, will be completely changed out by 2013 to be automated and provide the foundation for our smart grid system. Assure that our electric side of the GIS, our digitized mapping system, is completely integrated with the city by 2013. Currently, our electric system is not integrated and should be. We're going to implement new Department of Finance processes for GWP transactions. And without getting into too much detail there, that means that we're going to provide additional systems to the city's finance department to allow them to operate as our trading back office. Currently, our trading group is our front office. The GWP finance group, which is also our risk management group, is the middle office, and the city's finance department is the back office. So we're going to integrate that because it's very, very important, particularly if we're going to start trying to increase the amount of net revenue we bring in. So that's very important. And create a GWP system integration that assures no redundant data. Right now we have systems where you have to put data in one place and then put the same data somewhere else. That we're going to eliminate. And then we're going to look to launch profitable new business ventures in the out years of our plan. It may be utilizing our fiber optic system. It may be utilizing something from the smart grid system that we haven't even thought of yet. We talked about how important it is to collaborate within the city of Glendale, and we're going to improve communications with customers, city council, and city departments. We're going to determine the optimum value of the transfer to provide mutual benefits to the city and GWP. And what we mean by that is we know we have an obligation to transfer funds to the city. What we want to do is optimize that by finding ways of offsetting some of that with additional dollars coming into GWP. And if we do it well enough, it means we could actually enhance the transfer while at the same time enhancing the dollars coming into GWP. So that's a challenge for us, but we're looking at that more as a positive for the city and GWP in general, and that gives us an incentive to do so. Implement communications vehicles to improve our public image, and then implement new collaborative ventures with city departments beginning now. Basically, we said in 2011, but essentially right now. I mentioned legislative initiatives. We need to continue the compliance with state and federal regulatory requirements. For example, we talked about the greenhouse gas mitigation that we have to do. That's a very important project for us, and there'll be others like that. Establish and continue ongoing relationships with state and federal legislators and regulators. We are doing that right now. In fact, I was in Washington last week speaking to our representatives. Develop specific GWP legislative strategy beginning now, and we are doing that. And that's very, very important because we are driven by legislation and we are driven by regulation. And unless we have a strategy that keeps us in the mix, we'll just get what we get. So that's one of the most important issues we have up there. And then finally, provide quarterly reports on our activities. So those are our goals. Now, what we didn't show you last time is how, and I won't go through this in detail because we're going to give you a full copy of this. But this basically takes those goals, and if you take a look at water supply, under water supply you have in those kind of, I don't know what you want to call them, lavender stripes there, those are the actual goals that I just went through, each one of those. And then underneath that, now you have initiatives. So under the first one you have water supply and then produce additional water in the Verdugo Basin. And then how are we going to do that? Well, with more wells. Then if you notice, go to the right, and you'll notice names in there. And that's who owns that initiative. So it's not just an initiative, it's an initiative with an owner that's going to make sure that there's accountability for that. And then if you go to the right of that, there's the activities as to how you actually get there, and then finally the timeline to the right of that. So every goal that I just went through with you has a measurable and accountable and scheduled activity associated with it. So it is much more than just a series of goals. It is a full plan. And I'll just run through. You've got water supply and all of its associated activities, power supply, customer service, rates, water infrastructure, power infrastructure, workforce systems, City of Glendale, and legislation and regulation. That truly is the plan. And that provides all of the data that we need to make sure that we stay on track. And if we don't, we know who owns the project, we know when it's supposed to be done, and so on. And as we mentioned earlier, there'll be a scoreboard that will be available to all of our customers, to all of our employees, to you on a quarterly basis that will take, in a very reduced fashion, which I just showed you, and give you basically a dashboard approach to whether we're ahead of schedule, meeting schedule, or behind schedule, and be done by color coding, and it'll be done quarterly. And again, if you take a look at water supply, each quarter will have a color code in those little squares that'll indicate the status of that particular goal. And if we find one that's behind schedule, we'll look in and see what needs to be done and bring it up to schedule. If for some reason it needs to be changed, we'll make a change. Every year we'll review all of these to make sure they're still applicable to where we're headed. But this is our scoreboard. This will be available every quarter, and it'll have these and the rest of our goals. And that is a very quick run-through of our strategic plan. I appreciate your patience, but I'd be happy to take some questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Excellent. The reporting rate on the goal compliance for the commission, did I understand that to be quarterly?
Yes.
Okay. And it would be through the form of the scoreboards and the other, you called it the monitoring worksheet?
Yes.
Okay. On the monitoring worksheet, you had approximately in the center long lists of tasks to be performed. Yeah, there we go. Kind of like on the first one there for the initiative, City Council Communications, Steiger, create regularly scheduled workshops. Those are not necessarily sequential steps. Those are just tasks that have to be performed to get
Those are tasks. They're not necessarily sequential. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Is there a plan to put this on the web?
Yes. Well, not this, but the other scoreboard.
The other scoreboard.
The summary scoreboard, yes.
Plus the key result areas and
Yes.
the various goals. Okay. I don't want to dominate the scene. Let's see. Did the development of the strategic plan result in any changes to the budget?
Well, it actually focused the budget. That's actually a very good question, since we just spent the last 2 hours before this meeting going over the entire budget for next year. And what it did is it focused the budget in these areas. So now there is consistency and alignment between the strategic plan and our budget. So the answer is yes, they're very much aligned.
Okay, and I think it's important to highlight to the audience that this isn't so much a way of increasing the budget out of control. It's a management tool or something like that. I think people need to understand that because there may be some misunderstanding.
Yeah, in fact, what it does do is it forces us to look at prioritization. So what will happen over time if we find that some of these initiatives will create additional pressures on the budget, we will reallocate or we'll extend the time frame. But the budget, right now, our budget is very much contained in and it's a function of the revenue in versus what it's going to cost to do the things that we need to do up front to maintain that 35% differential on the electric side, for example.
Okay,
so they all come together.
Okay. Was the water supply key result area reviewed with MWD by any chance?
I don't, well, actually, at this point, I'd have to say no, but since we have our MWD representative here, now I can say, well, to a degree, that's true, yes.
Okay.
But not formally, no.
Okay, okay. And was the power supply key result area reviewed with SCAPA by any chance?
SCAPA saw what we are doing, in fact, made comments about our 35% reduction, yes.
Okay. The reason I ask is I'm wondering if these outside agencies view these goals as kind of compatible with their own vision of how the southern water and power supplies are to develop.
Certainly SCAPA does, yes.
Okay. And on your key result area and power supply, you had less, number 2, you had less than 10,000 heat by 2015 for Grayson Power Plant.
Correct.
What units were those?
That would be a blend of all units. In other words, the idea is to get all if we operate the entire plant, your blended heat rate would be less than 10,000.
I meant like, is it BTUs per hour or some units like that?
I see. Well, the
Yeah.
units, it's a BTU per is it per kWh, per 1,000, or per mega? Is it kW? Yeah. So it's per kW.
Per kW?
kWh.
Okay. And on number 5 for power supply, that was Operated Energy Management Resources Group under defined metrics beginning 2010. Is that related to your energy risk management policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
The formation of that risk policy helps you fulfill this particular goal, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. And on the key result area on the workforce, number 5, you had achieved 0 preventable vehicle accidents by June 2013.
Yes.
This is determined through vehicle inspections that are how does that done?
Whenever there's any kind of vehicle accident, there's a determination as to whether it was preventable or not.
Okay.
And occasionally they're preventable. In other words, there's an accident that our employee had that could have been prevented.
So it could involve operator error or something like that?
Generally it
okay.
does. Yeah.
All right, okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
A couple questions for you. With regard to the strategic plan, it's online, or it will be online, is
It
that
will
right?
be online, yes.
Is the synopsis also going to be online that we received today, the brochure?
Actually, the whole plan will be online.
Okay.
Yeah.
I found this very helpful, actually, because it kind of summarizes the thick document. I don't know if it's possible to get that online, but it might be helpful to have that on there for
Good.
people to take a look at. And is the plan to redo it every year or every couple of years? How often?
We will revisit the plan once a year, unless there's some event that creates the need to do it sooner than that. But it'll be at a minimum once a year.
Okay. And I don't want to go into too many specifics because we can probably plan it for the future, but with regard to the 35% rates, electrical rates below Southern California Edison by 35%, that had my interest piqued. I mean, what is the plan in trying to do that?
Okay, there is a very specific plan to get there. Currently, we have 2 power purchase agreements, or I should say energy purchase agreements, that are well above market pricing today. They were established approximately 15 years ago, and today they are, in aggregate, creating about an additional $15 million above what we should be paying for energy. So we are currently actively renegotiating or litigating, depending upon the contract, those 2 contracts. If we can bring them down, even reduce them by 50%, that would have a fairly significant downward pressure on rates. Worst case would be both of those will expire by the end of the planning horizon, within 5 years. So when they expire, by definition, we'll no longer be burdened with that. So that, in and of itself, will create about a 15 to 20% reduction in rates. We are actively trying to do that to reduce those now. We are also, as I mentioned, working to increase the amount of dollars coming into GWP through outside system sales, which is one of the reasons we want to increase the efficiency of Grayson. If we're successful at bringing in another $10 million, combined with the other $15 million from the contracts, that's $25 million per year that could be used to reduce rates. Now, even with that reduction, that would probably reduce our rates 20 to 25%. We also know that Edison has upward pressure on its rates. So between our reduction, or at least levelizing of our rates, and increasing in their rates, we think that we can achieve, even though it's a stretch, 35%.
Thank you.
And this is the average rate among all the classes?
That's the average, yeah. Yeah.
Just a follow-up. Where do we stand right now with Southern California Edison?
On average, we're slightly lower, but slightly is the word. We are about the third, on average, about the third highest right now in California. And again, it depends on the month. Some utilities just had some rate increases, so we're going to take a look again. We may now be fourth or fifth. But bottom line is we're high enough, and we know that we are, so that whether we're third, fourth, or second, it really doesn't matter. We know we have a charge to get our rates down.
Okay, and I also wanted to congratulate you. I think it's a great strategic plan.
Thank you.
So, looking forward to the reports, maybe annual revisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to just remind everyone, it's not my plan, it's everyone's plan. And the design team, which basically are all here today, worked on this thing for about 9 months, along with the input from most of the employees. So it was a group effort.
I have a quick question, Mrs. Steiger. There's two items of interest to me, and I think of the community too, is the rates that Mr. Foley mentioned, and the other item was the transfer level to the city. On the issue of rates, it sounds like we have a plan in place to reduce the rates, not just by power procurement, but by increasing revenue to offset the base rates. So it sounds like the potential is there, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can really, if that aspect really materialize, so that we can maybe reduce even further by 35%. If the more money we make for the city, then the reduction could be higher. Is that not correct?
It's possible. I think there's a point of no return, but it is possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, if we make additional revenue from outside, well, what do you call those? The revenue outside of the procurement?
Yeah, off-system sales.
Off-system
essentially.
sales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, if we make those off-system additional revenue from off-system sales, wouldn't the city or the level of transfer be pretty much consistent? If we were assuming like a 10 or 15% transfer to the city, wouldn't the additional revenue that we make gets transferred to the city as well?
Not all of it. A portion of it. A portion of it would, yeah.
So it sounds like right now, every year we ask for a percentage that we transfer to the city general fund. How much is that again?
Well, every year, the transfer percentage is somewhere in the area of about 13% in total. And what occurs is it's up to City Council every year to either confirm that or change it. And they can change it if they'd like, make it higher, make it lower. Generally speaking, though, it stays pretty constant. And what we would like to do at some point is fix the amount, the actual dollar amount of the transfer.
Okay, rather than a percentage.
Rather than a percentage, yeah. Whether or not that's possible, I don't know. But that's something that, if we can, as I said, offset additional transfer dollars with dollars coming in from off-system sales, that would be the ultimate. That would be the way we would like to go.
Yeah, because I guess a lot of people would know that for other utilities, and I agree with it, that percentage is okay as long as the money is put to good use. I mean, we elect our officials and trust them to make that fund available and for the benefit of the city. So I won't be sitting here to second-guess anybody using our fund. I mean, we have an obligation to transfer the money to the city, and whatever they do with the money is up to them. Whether they invest in roads or salaries that is the benefit of the city, then it's okay. But I think we should actually set, like you mentioned in the strategic plan, an optimum transfer level for mutual benefits, and I think we should even correlate that to an average utility in California, how much they transfer to the shareholders or how much DWP transfer back to the city, so we maybe can correlate that so we don't do more or less. Maybe that's something that we can look into.
Yeah, and that goes along, by the way, with the issue right up there of City of Glendale collaboration, and that would be a very collaborative undertaking with the City Council, because it would be the City Council controls how much that is, but with our input of trying to enhance it, I think that's a good collaboration, so I agree.
Can we recommend to the City Council so that we can have a fixed amount rather than have a new City Council every 3 or 4 years and they might change their mind? I mean, maybe somehow have an ordinance in place that we transfer 11% every year rather than having such a wide range that could possibly be up to 25%. Is that part of your collaboration effort that you're talking about?
Well, the collaboration would be to see if we can fix the dollar amount and then enhance it with additional dollars with off-system sales. And if we can actually find additional dollars beyond that to put it towards the transfer, if the transfer needs to be increased. So we're looking at a bunch of different options. You have the ability, if you'd like, to make a recommendation, of course.
Okay, so you're not talking about collaboration in terms of an ordinance. It's just more of a joint collaborative effort.
Yes.
So they could change their mind if you have a fixed dollar, but then the next city council can change their mind back and say we're going to go back to a 15%.
Yeah, and I think they'll always have that ability. Yes.
Right. Something we'll maybe look into. Maybe I will suggest that in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I want to congratulate you on this very comprehensive plan, and I look forward to seeing the quarterly updates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item, Chief.
4A, Item 2, Quarterly Risk Management Update.
I have provided 2 sheets that look like this. What I'd like to do is just take a minute or two to describe what it is that we're doing right now with our risk management program and our trading program. If you recall, just a couple minutes ago, I mentioned working within defined metrics. This is an example of those defined metrics. And what you have in front of you are 2 sheets. The first one is what we call the system hedge schedule. And this will just give you a general idea of how we are procuring energy 18 months out. This is an 18-month hedge of natural gas. And you have 4 sloped lines, and they represent from bottom to top. The bottom would be our normal percentage that we would hedge each month out over the next 18 months. So as you notice, it declines, and that's the percentage of natural gas that we would buy or procure as a percentage of what we need. And then as you go up, what those lines represent are different, what we call buy zones. And those buy zones are determined by the actual price of natural gas. So the lower the price, the higher that buy zone is. So what that really means is if we weren't looking at any kind of price fluctuation, if we were price blind, we would follow the bottom line and just buy that much every month. But when the price of natural gas goes low and goes within certain parameters low, we actually go above that and we buy more than we need because we know the price is low, and so we go into these different buy zones. So essentially that jagged line that you see represents what we actually purchased each month for these months moving outward. So you can see that we've actually been, for the last few months, in a high buy zone because the price of natural gas has been relatively low. So we have hedged a fair amount of our natural gas needs because of the low price of gas. Now, if it were the opposite, we might be doing, we may be under that. Now, we might buy a little bit less if the price was very high and very volatile. So this is what we're doing from a system hedge standpoint right now. And if you go to the second page shows, and again, I won't go through it, but it shows our position in terms of what we've actually purchased and hedged. And I think the important thing to note is down towards the bottom, you'll see a yellow line. And that shows how much natural gas we've procured through hedges over the next 18 months. And you notice it declines, as it should, as we go out. And it shows you above that how much physical gas we've bought, how much financial we've done, and what that and energy that we've bought. And what that really means is when you buy physical, you're actually buying it being generated or being produced right now, and that's physical. On the financial, of course, that's our options, our puts and calls and financial instruments that we use. And we use a portfolio approach, as we should, to do that. So what you can see is how much physical we buy, how much financial we use, and then our total, in this case it's on peak, because we do on peak and off peak, but this is our on peak hedged. And then right below that is the goal. And you notice the goal is always to be hedged at about 80%. So in other words, we cover all of our energy needs at 80%, unless, and this is what you're seeing in these first few months here, unless the price is extremely low. And then we go much higher than that, and that's exactly what you've seen. So this is how we're doing our procurement today, which is a change from how we did it a year ago. And we're getting much more sophisticated, and we're looking, and we'll probably come back to you in a month or maybe 2 and talk a little bit more about bringing the the horizon, the time horizon out to maybe 24 months or 36 months, particularly when volatility starts to rise again. You want to have a longer time horizon. So right now we're doing 18-month hedges. You can see where it fits in. And that pretty much describes what we've done over the last 3 months.
Look at page 2 of the chart that you handed us. The yellow line, you take just, for example, December 2009. So we've purchased 64% of our needs, is that?
That's correct. It's 64% is hedged.
And where did that number come from? Why have we chosen that versus 80% at this point if prices are lower?
What we did, all right, the way that's determined is the fixed physical is something we have contracts for. For example, we have contracts for natural gas from the fields, the gas fields, and that's generally it's a fixed amount, and that's physical. And as you go farther out in your hedge, and of course in December we're out a bit, you only buy a small piece from the financial hedge piece. So that 7% is what we would. That's the normal timed hedge. And so that leaves you with, in this case, let's see, 64% total hedged, which means you're covered at 64%. So that's a function of what we already have in terms of physical contracts and what we've hedged in terms of financial contracts. But it means that as you get closer, now as you move closer to that month, you'll start to fill in that hedge. So next month it'll be higher than 64%. It might be 68 or 70%. Depending upon how much of that hedge we fill next month and the month after and so on. And the idea is to get to 80% so that you're only exposed to the real-time market by 20%. Okay, so that's why the goal is 80%, but when you get closer to the real time, to the real day, you're actually above that.
So if you look at October 2009, then you're at 86%.
Correct.
Is that because it's a hotter month? Or
Nope, that's because we got such a good deal on gas, we bought more. Yep. And that's what we're seeing right now, and that's why this is kind of an unusual line, because in a very volatile situation, the farther out you go, the farther it drops below 80%. But in this case, the prices are so low that we're actually hedging above that.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
How do you know that you're doing so well on this? I mean, like, for example, you just gave October 9, you're pretty much 86% hedged. How would you know? I mean, when we get there, of course, when prices are high, then you make a lot of money. But
Right.
how do you know for the last 3 months that you've been doing a good job of hedging?
We look at mark-to-market, and the mark-to-market tells us if we're doing a good job in hedging. And there's no question that some months you do well and some months you don't. You hope that at the end of the year, you're always in the plus, that you've done well. Right now, we're doing relatively well. Interestingly, and that's a good question, if I go back to last summer when prices were very, very high, we put in some puts and calls, and we kind of collared the natural gas prices at a level that we thought looked pretty good. We didn't expect it to drop way below. Well, as it turns out, it did drop way below, so we ended up paying a little bit higher for some months because we had no way of knowing. So there were a couple of months where we actually lost, we were out of the money, so to speak. But since that time, with the market continue to go down, we've reduced those puts, and now we're in the money. So, but there are months when we're out of the money, no question, and we do measure mark to market.
Okay, so that on a month-to-month basis, when you measure your market to market, on a daily basis, weekly or monthly?
Well, our trader, we have two traders. We have ACES and TEA. They look at it on a daily basis, so we know on a daily basis whether we're in the money or out of the money. That's correct. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just a quick question. Just looking at the graph, if I understand the graph right, whatever is in the future is projected.
Correct.
And if we look at July 10th, that's the lowest. That's at, I guess, 50, or July 10, we're looking at 52%. The hedge percentage to be around 52%.
That's correct.
Which is below our normal line. Is that right, or?
You mean this one right here?
Right.
Yes, that's actually.
But
below.
not necessarily it's going to stay there.
It's not going to necessarily stay there. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, it moves. It's a forward strip that continues to move every month.
Okay.
That's right.
This is projection based on today.
Correct.
Or what?
That is exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. interesting.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes, thank you. How does your method here compare to the method that you were using a year ago?
Oh, this is much more aggressive. Much more aggressive.
Has it resulted in benefits? Can you articulate?
It's starting
those?
to. It's starting to. As I mentioned, when you first start, you have to. The one thing you do when you hedge is once you put the hedge in place, you stick with it. Okay. Now you can work within these buy zones. Okay, but what you shouldn't do is decide to stop the hedge and go into a different way of procuring, because then that eliminates any of the benefits that you may have already accumulated, or it holds the losses that you may have already accumulated.
Oh, I see.
So as we move forward, we're starting to see the benefits of this start to take place. Up front, no. Up front, you don't see the benefits, but we're starting to now. A year from now, we'll see a lot of benefit. Just based on this chart right here, we know we'll see benefit.
And when we say hedge here, what we mean is the actual purchase of natural gas as a percentage of the total energy portfolio that we're using to generate power.
That's correct.
Okay. Your jagged line in the first graph, am I correct? It does not match the yellow line in the second page. Are they meant to represent different things?
No. Well, yeah, they do represent. You can't draw a correlation. You could if I had one more set of data in here.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm a little bit confused here. Is there a time lag between the price of natural gas determined for this formula and the actual determination of the hedging percentage? Or I guess what I'm saying is, are the hedging percentages you're using here based on a particular price, as of the current price, for example?
Yeah, well, if you only used, if you didn't look at real-time pricing and just hedged, you'd use this bottom line exactly as it is. Exactly where those data points are.
Okay.
That's what you would use. But since the real world works in volatility, if the price is low, then we can go up into these zones. If it's high, we stay at least with this line and possibly lower.
I see.
We have other boundaries that are known as Bollinger Bands, which also do it on a daily basis, determine how far up above or below these lines you need to go.
Okay. I may not be fully understanding. Why are the buying zone lines declining over the period of time?
Because you buy less and less each month.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then the next month, you layer that on. So it's always, what you're doing essentially is layering. You've got a series of layered buys for each month.
Okay. I'm going to have to study this some more. Rather complex. Thank you.
Interesting.
It took me a while to get it to.
I'm sure you have.
Yes, Mr. Steiger, I just have a last quick thing. How much exposure in terms of dollar value are we exposed as a city or as GWP on a monthly basis? Are we exposed to greater risk or less risk than before?
Well, we work within a certain parameter. So our exposure, generally, we keep about $1 million in terms of funds, so that if our hedge, for example, if we have to sell a put or a call, and we're called on it, so to speak, our exposure is right now no more than $1 million.
Okay, so any given day we can only lose $1 million.
In terms of puts and calls, yes, that's our exposure on any given day. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like there's potential for greater loss where it bankrupts the city or anything.
Oh no,
like that.
no. Okay. We work within very strict parameters in terms of how much we buy and how much we sell.
So there's like some kind of a limit or sort
Yes,
of
there are
for
limits.
traders, because I'm not sure how our contract is set up with ACES, but they're not supposed to do what they're not supposed to, right?
We establish their limits. Yeah, we actually have a risk management policy that I was hoping to bring here today, but it's not complete. It's complete, but we're revising it. And in that policy, the parameters are very explicit in terms of how much energy can be traded, what the dollar volume is, what the actual physical volume is, and what a trader can do, and then who has to be responsible if we go above that and that kind of thing.
Oh, great.
Any other questions?
In your strategic plan, I see that the goal is to reduce the electricity consumption by 7%.
Correct.
In here, with your system forecast load, I see that next year's forecast is the same as this year. We're not starting to decrease until much further down.
We are decreasing, because what that means is we actually see a 1 to 2% increase every year. So what we're doing is, through energy efficiency, we're reducing that and flattening it.
Flattening it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Next item.
Item 4A3, GWP Annual Report.
Okay, I have in front of you is literally hot off the presses our annual report. And in the interest of time, I won't go through it, but you have a copy. And if you have any questions, please bring them to me. And then, oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to thank you for the timely publication of this.
And then finally, we are scheduling a workshop for our water ordinance for April 20th. I believe we will be noticing that. And at that point in time, we will have a full, comprehensive report and overview of the water ordinance.
Question about that. Do you anticipate how long that workshop will be?
About 2 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Glenn, is this on the internet? This annual report available on the web?
Should, I don't, is it on the internet yet? It is, okay.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4B, Water. Number 1, Water Supply Report. Peter Kavunas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Peter Kavunas, Water Services Administrator. Under this item, we typically present you a report that shows water production. The water production by month, the latest month that we have completed is February of 2009. Production for the month in total was 7. That's a pretty low number. Actually, the lowest number. Reflecting a little bit of report has information in it. Local production. Show you the question has come up in the past for the Commission to consider whether we're actually conserving water. The question is always, what effect does the weather have? So I wanted to show you graphically. Okay. Is this better? Is this better? Okay. Hopefully this will work a little better. Okay. Got some good advice from our customer services manager. Thank you, Tammy. Wanted to show you a little bit of a technical analysis, and I say a little bit, but it's helpful to understand a little bit about water production, water demands in the city of Glendale, and the effects of weather. And so what you see in this chart, it's in front of you, it's also up on the screen, if we can get the camera to show it on the screen. You see 3 graphs, and the top graph shows the water production, the water delivered to our residents in 2006. That's the maroon line. And the line in blue is the water production in 2008. You can see the two lines are close together. In some months, 2008 is below. In some months, it's ahead of 2006. And by the end of the year, by the 12th month, the overall difference was about 2%, meaning that in 2008 we used about 2% less water than in 2006. 2006 is what we consider a base year. It was the last normal year before the current drought, before any conservation messages went out to our community. So we're using 2006 as the base. And the top chart would lead someone to conclude that there has been no conservation in Glendale. It's interesting that in terms of volume, that would be a correct statement, but in terms of weather and accounting for weather, that is not as correct and let me explain. The middle chart and the bottom chart show the difference between 2008 and 2006, both in terms of weather and in terms of water production. You'll see on the chart, in the middle chart, the axis is in terms of percent. And you have the 0% line running right down the middle. And then you have positive above that and negative below that. And water use is shown in blue. And the way to read this chart is that if the blue line is below the 0%, as it were in January, then the January consumption in 2008 was less than the January consumption in 2006. And the number is actually shown in the table below. It was 9% less. So if you were looking for clues, you might say, well, we did have some conservation in January of 2008 because we used 9% less water. In fact, that may not necessarily be true, because evapotranspiration, which is a measure of water evaporated through soil surface, transpired through plant surface, it's a surrogate indicator for humidity. It was also different, and evapotranspiration was considerably less in 2008 than it was in 2006. So actually, we could have used less water. The same thing if you were to drop down in the temperature chart. The colors are a little harder to read on the screen, but you can see that the temperature doesn't always follow the humidity, and that's shown as a different dimension there. It actually turns out that temperature-wise, it was not quite as warm in 2008, but different than the humidity. If you follow this trend, in February and March and April for the comparison months of the 2 years, you'll see that generally we used more water in 2008 than we did in 2006. But if you look at especially the evapotranspiration chart, it was considerably drier. You could extrapolate a little bit and still be correct and say it was hotter and drier in February, March, April, and May in the 2 years that are being compared. So the fact that we used a little bit more water in those months doesn't necessarily mean we weren't conserving. We were conserving with respect to the weather. Now, interestingly, when you go a little further in time, starting in about June, you'll see that in about June, water demand in 2008 was the same or lower than in 2006, and it stayed that way regardless of temperature and humidity for those same months. And as a matter of fact, you can see a trend that's actually growing where the difference between those two lines is getting larger and larger, showing that there indeed was conservation in Glendale with respect to weather in 2008. And the way to frame this in more understandable terms, because I struggled with it, I said, well, if there was conservation, why do we use the same amount of water? Well, the way to think about it is that had the weather been the same, had we not been conserving, we would have used a lot more water in 2008 than we actually did. And that's pretty significant. It does show that the conservation efforts that Atina and her staff have made have taken hold. It does show that people voluntarily have conserved water, and that's really all good news. Now, on a little more sombering note, it's not good enough. And when we do move into mandatory conservation, which I believe will happen starting July, we will actually need to use physically, in actual terms, in absolute terms, use less water than we did in 2006. But as a first step, to me, this is very encouraging. You've heard me say it before. I think the people of Glendale can and will respond to conservation. And to me, this is proof that they have, because indeed, had they not, they would have used a lot more water in 2008 than they did in 2006.
Peter, a couple quick questions for you while you're on.
Sure.
Did you take into consideration the population growth, if any, in Glendale, and look at what the population has done and whether that...
There's been some population growth, but the effect is so minimal that it was not considered here.
Okay. If you look at your three charts here, and let's pick November of 2008, for example, the water usage was down 1,000 acre-feet, roughly? 500 acre-feet?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. And then the second chart, can you explain it again to me? I guess I had a hard time understanding what the ETO was versus the water use.
Yeah, the November numbers, if you look at November numbers, what the middle chart tells me, reading it, is that the use of water in November 2008 was 9% less than in November of 2006. The evapotranspiration was 26% higher in 2008 than it was in 2006.
So since the ETO is higher, you would expect to, in a normal situation, have a higher water use?
Yes.
Okay.
And indeed it was lower.
All right, and then the final chart, if you stay with November...
If you stay with November, it was the water demand was 9% lower and temperature was 9% higher in 08 than it was in 06.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The data, by the way, comes from a CIMMYS weather station. CIMMYS is a statewide network of weather stations that are tied in. It turns out there is a Glendale station, so I feel pretty good about presenting this data to you without much in terms of qualifiers. This is very relevant data to Glendale.
Thank you for those charts. They're actually very helpful.
Good. I'm glad.
Mr. President, let's see a couple of questions. I take it that evapotranspiration is an indirect measure of humidity, meaning that if evapotranspiration is high, the humidity is low.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then besides evapotranspiration, temperature, and conservation, we're not really seeing other significant variables that might affect water use with these charts. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's my understanding as well, Commissioner Miller. If anything, it would be the impact of population, and we don't have something that we can account for population by month, and so I would hesitate to interject that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Kapuna. This is very useful and very informative graphs that you put together. I was wondering if we can put also 2007 in there. Is that possible? Or because you're only comparing 2 years, but do we have information from last year to, not 2008, but 2007 to include a 3-year trend?
Of course. The data is available. We can do that. The risk was presenting to you a spaghetti chart that is unreadable. And actually, we originally had all this data in one chart, and it truly wasn't readable. So we started segregating into 3.
Was the trend very similar to what you see?
Yeah. It's really, the conservation message doesn't really kick in until halfway through 2008. That's when people really started getting it. That's when you see the separation in the two charts.
So will you be continuing to update this as we move?
We certainly can. Actually, where we really need to shift focus as we move to mandatory is really the top chart. After mandatory conservation is called for, it no longer matters whether we're adjusting for the weather. What really matters is, are we really using less than we did in 2006?
So far, with voluntary conservation, from one of the previous meetings, I thought I've heard 10%. We've been seeing, is that right?
On some months, yes.
Some months? Okay.
In other months, we've been, you can see in 2008, you can see that in some months we had 10% below, 4% below, 6% below. December was 13% below, but the cumulative effect for one calendar year was 2%. So,
I see. And we're considering 10% right now for mandatory?
Yes, in a short answer, yes. It depends on what Metropolitan Water District announces as a regional shortage level.
Okay.
And they're looking at 15%, which would translate to us to 10%, because we're not 100% reliant on that.
Okay, thank you.
When do we expect that number?
When?
Yeah.
I would expect it April 14th. And MWD would probably implement it effective July 1st, which is what our target for implementation of mandatory is.
Oh, yes, another question. Is there a way of estimating conservation in a statistical manner where you would normalize these other variables like evapotranspiration and temperature so that we could get a estimate of conservation independent of those other variables?
There probably is. I would have to ask somebody much brighter than I am to compute that. From a practical utility management point of view, what we need when we get into mandatory conservation is people physically to use less water, period.
Good point.
And so we need to stay with that message. The alternative is, again, it's not that the water wouldn't be available, but the price we would have to pay, the penalties we'd have to pay, are exorbitant. And so we can't, in good conscience, come to our residents and say, well, it's okay, we're doing fine. The price would be sky high and prohibitive, I would say.
Are those rates ready? Is that what we're going to be looking at on the 20th?
We will certainly preview with you what Metropolitan Water District is considered in terms of regional shortage. Their penalties have been posted, and for exceedance of the announced regional shortage level, it's 4 times the price of regular.
Right. I mean, our rates, Glendale Water and Power rates, the water rates. I'm assuming you're going to go maybe drop the allowance for that first tier. And I mean, are we ready?
We will present more information to you on the 20th, and the concept is a conservation surcharge, and that will be described in detail to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Not particularly an easy topic to tackle. We're in the business of providing water to our customers and our residents, and the last thing we want to do is talk about providing less to them. But nevertheless, we're here to manage through the thick and thin of it. So, the last item that I have under Water Department updates is a quick update on the Chevy Chase 968 reservoir and pump station construction. We are nearly complete with the north cell of the 2 cells of the reservoir. We expect to be putting water in it in May and testing it for water integrity. We expect to be testing the pump station in June and putting that half of the reservoir in operation, along with the pump station, in operation in June. So very exciting. The construction is progressing pretty well. We have had some change orders with the contractor, things that were well within the contingency. We are considering some amendments to the professional services contracts for design and for construction support. Those amendments are going to be presented and discussed with the city manager, city council. We're still well within 10% of the contract value for those services. So in terms of industry standard, we believe we're doing very, very well, even with the proposed amendments. The biggest issue that has come up, and I've reported on this to the Commission, has been a delay due to unexpected circumstances that we ran into early on. We totaled that up to about 105 days of delay, construction delay total. As you know from your experience, a delay in a construction contract means that the construction manager needs to be there more days. That means more charges, as well as the design engineer needs to support a construction project longer, and that's driven some requested amendments. We hope to have a tour of the construction site in the near term. What's missing right now is a staircase that would let us into the north cell. The construction workers don't seem to have that problem. They go down the scaffold and ladders. But to make it a little more accessible for those of us that are not in that business, we probably need to have the staircase completed before we go in. So as soon as we get that completed, we'll be inviting you to join us.
So where are we at? Are we 105 days behind, or did we implement Saturdays? How did that play out?
We did implement Saturdays. We have agreed that the schedule was delayed by 105 days. We've worked with a contractor to reestablish storage in the reservoir before summer, and that's the completion of half of the storage will be done before the hot months of the summer. The actual construction date was moved from July to October 6th. That's for the second cell to be completed. The overall construction schedule of completion by December of 2009 has not changed. We're still on track to meet that, and we do not expect to go beyond that. Our deal with the golf course was for 2 years, was to be done by December of 2009, and we're holding to that.
And with regard to the residents in the neighborhood, any complaints, any problems that you've encountered recently?
None that I know of. Our PR firm is happy as can be. The ongoing joke is that the only time the phone rings is an errant marketing call that they get. But by and large, nearby residents have been satisfied. We have received, and I truly appreciate, an unsolicited letter from a resident nearby expressing his appreciation and gratitude for how well the project has progressed. We've had community meetings where we've invited commission as well as the community members to come join us to get a presentation on the progress, as well as walk the job site at night after the contractor is done. And we've drawn a good crowd for after-hours community meetings. We've had more than 30 people show up each time. So we're very pleased with the way the contractors behaved, very pleased with the construction managers, Met Cafanetti. They've served us very well in this project.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Next item.
Thank you very much.
Report 4C, Customer Services. Report number 1, Economic Effects on Customer Services. Tammy Valier.
Sorry about that. And what assistance GWP is providing. The information I'm going to provide to you is for this fiscal year through February 28th. Customer contacts over the telephone have continued to be higher than we saw last year. While it's less than the 50% increase we saw in December, February was still 18% higher than last February. Over the year, we've seen an overall 17% increase in telephone calls, which equates to an additional 1,500 calls for the call center to answer on a monthly basis. We're now exceeding 10,000 calls per month. For the call center, the most frequent phone inquiries are general bill inquiries, followed by payment arrangements. The front counter has also greatly been affected. In February, we had a 60% increase over last year. We believe that by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, we will have assisted 20,000 customers at the front counter. This does not include our payment counter. That would be an additional 70,000 transactions. This is just the front lobby where customers come in, sit down, and need personalized assistance of some type. For the counter, the primary contact is public benefit programs where they're seeking information or applying for a program, followed by new service. These increases, combined with our staffing issues, have had a negative impact on our service level. We have 32 customer service utility representative positions in customer services. Of the 32, 5 employees have been with us 6 months or less. We have 4 vacancies. 2 of those are true vacancies where we need to recruit and hire somebody. We have 1 employee who's on long-term family medical leave and 1 that is on long-term disability. We also have an additional position that we anticipate will be vacated within the next 30 days due to a transfer to another section or another department. So we're working with a 15% vacancy rate and another 15% that are new, and although they're doing quite well, they aren't fully trained, and with that can result in transactions taking longer and additional oversight, monitoring, and supervision required for those employees. But we know that will soon be resolved. We are part of the city, and there is a citywide hiring freeze, so we're unable to fill those vacancies at the moment. As far as the service level, you can see from the chart below that in 07-08 we lost 3.1% of our calls, which is average, actually better than average. Our service level, which is answering 80% of our calls within 30 seconds, we exceeded that goal and answered 82% of our calls within 30 seconds. And the average customer wait time was 32 seconds. This year, however, we've lost almost 10% of our calls. Our service level is 64.3%, and the customer wait time average is 1 minute and 16 seconds. Where 1 minute and 16 seconds may not seem like a long time for a customer to wait, that is the average. There are many calls that take less than that, and many calls that take longer. So, an example, on a Monday when we're extremely busy, last Monday we had a call wait of 22 minutes, and for us that is certainly not the service we want to provide or the service that our customers deserve. So that is an issue that we're dealing with.
Can I interrupt you there for 1 minute since we're on that graph?
Sure.
The increase to 1 minute and 16 seconds, internally, have you assessed, is that because of the number of employees or vacancies that you have? Are those vacancies related to the call center, or is it just because of the sheer volume in increased calls?
It's a combination of both. Even if we were fully staffed, our service level would have a hard time meeting our 80% in 30 seconds because of the dramatic increase in call volume and counter assistance.
The calls have increased 18%?
Correct. For February, it was 18%.
And year-to-date, 17%? Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. On the financial side, you can see that our bankruptcies are up 127%. The number of companies or individuals filing bankruptcy has increased about 48%. And the dollar value, $57,000, really is not unreasonable. You can just see that it is a dramatic difference from last year. We do keep a close eye on potential bankruptcies. We look for any patterns in the way they maybe pay their utility bills, if they usually pay on time and now they're starting to slip back a little. We do keep an eye on it, and we respond appropriately if we can to any changes or signals that we see, but we can't always actually do something different. So we had 31 this year, 21 last year, and both this year and last year it was about 50% commercial, 50% residential, or individual, I should say.
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to your counter service, you mentioned that, so at the counter, you handle the public benefits and the new services, and my question is, are you doing anything differently, treating these applications, new services, or public benefits requirements, criteria, and things like that this year versus last year?
Well, there's probably a few things that we'll get into a little bit later in the presentation, but first to answer your question, at the front counter we will handle all transactions. The PBC program is the number one contact reason for why customers are coming into the office, followed by new service. We have seen an increase, most likely due to some of the programs and assistance that people need.
Yes.
During these times. We have the Glendale Care program, which is new, and so we've had 1,000 applications since that time, and most customers, for whatever reason, like to come into the lobby, probably for translation issues, or they want to go over the application. Maybe they don't completely understand the application, so they want more personalized service.
Mm-hmm. So we are doing more.
Yes.
To try to assist wherever we can.
We are.
Offer,
and I could go through. I'll go through that.
Right.
In a
Sorry to
little bit.
interrupt.
No, that's okay. As far as our uncollectibles, they've increased 12%, although our write-off to revenue is up. The percentage is 0.16%, which is well below the average. We're doing very well in our write-offs. Of this, the almost 350,000, 233,000 of that is electric, 23,000 of that is water, and the balance of that is a combination for rubbish, sewer, and hazardous waste. So that Those figures that you're looking at is everything that GWP bills on the utility bill. This chart shows the number of bills issued, the number of reminder notices, the number of disconnect warnings, followed by the actual number of disconnects. As you can see, the vast majority of our bills are paid on time without any reminder needed, and less than 1% of the bills issued actually end up having to be disconnected. For those customers that are having difficulty paying, there is some assistance we can provide. I'll go over each of these after this slide. So we have bill analysis, payment arrangements, GWP low-income programs through our public benefits charge, and referral to other programs and agencies. When a customer calls and they feel that their utility bill is high, there's a few things that we do. The first thing is we try to help customers understand their bill and understand their usage. We explain that this is a 2-month bill, that it's for 60 days, where they may have come from another utility where it was only 30 days, and so it may be a shock to them at first. We then explain that we have a lot of other city services included on our bill, such as rubbish, sewer, hazardous waste. If their actual usage appears to be high to us, we may ask them about appliances. We may ask if they are using space heaters. The chart that you're looking at compares a customer's electric usage to the average usage on their street, and this chart is actually available to all customers if they go on to GlendaleWaterandPower.com and they sign on to eCare. They can compare their usage, both electric or water, to others on their street. It's not 100% accurate because there may be different variables. It may be a very long street. Maybe, if it's Brand Boulevard, it's probably too much to really do a good comparison. But in this example, it's a small street. As you can see, in March, this customer used more than twice the average. In this situation, the customer may immediately realize what it is they're using, or if they don't, they still are having difficulty understanding why they would be using so much more electricity. We'd refer them to the Smart Home Energy and Water Savings Program. The second thing we would do is offer them a payment extension to postpone their payment due date. We will make about 25,000 payment arrangements by the end of this year. This is about a 14% increase from last year. And as you can see from this chart, the majority are residential customers that need assistance. We also refer them to the low-income public benefit programs. Glendale Care is the newest program. It began January 1st of 2009. This did replace the senior care program. However, those on senior care are still enrolled in senior care, and I'll go over that in a minute. The Glendale Care program is a $10 per month discount, and so far, since January 1st, we've received over 1,000 applications. We expect that there is about 15,000 customers that will apply and qualify for Glendale Care. There's an additional 5,000 customers that are already on senior care, and so that's a total of about 20,000 customers that can receive one of these benefits. The senior care program was $12 a month discount. Like I said, there's about 5,000 customers enrolled, and they will stay enrolled until they move, and at that time they can go into Glendale Care. We also have the Helping Hand program. This is a one-time payment of up to $150 that can be used towards the bill or deposit assistance. It is for low-income customers that are also facing temporary financial emergencies, such as the loss of a job or assistance with unexpected medical bills. Since 2002, 4,500 customers have received a total of $592,000, and this year, customers have received over $124,000. Cool Care is a program that provides new Energy Star refrigerators to customers. The refrigerator replaces the inefficient refrigerators that they may have that are 10 years old or older. The charge is $100, and that is billed to the customer over 2 years in equal installments. And since 2003, over 3,000 refrigerators have been replaced, and the old refrigerators have been recycled. Outside of GWP, there are some other assistance programs. The most common is the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, also known as LIHEAP. This is funded by the Department of Health and Human Services. It allows one payment per year to eligible families. The state average of that one payment is $298.57. In 07-08, 451 GWP customers received a total of $111,741, and this year 297 customers received $67,868. Their funding has been cut back somewhat. They do have service priorities, and the priority has been given to the elderly, disabled, and families with children under the age of 6. That is a newer requirement. Not so much a requirement, that is a priority for funding. This is not something that GWP processes or has a lot of information on. The state has basically put the Community Enhancement Services Center as the administrator, and they can be contacted at the number below, 818-891-4148. Customers can call our office, and we will provide them with that number as well. Catholic Charities also has some funding for assistance with basic needs, and utilities are included as a basic need. Last year, 73 Glendale customers were provided with $11,054. And this year so far, 62 customers were assisted with $9,718. Their number is 818-409-3080. And Salvation Army does have a small budget. It's $150 per month. They will give 3 customers per month $50 each. That funding does get used up pretty fast, usually the first day of the month. Their number is 818-246-5586, and again, any customer can call our office and we'll give them the contact information. And then coming soon is our monthly payment option through direct debit. I hope this will be live within the next 60 days. This is the option where customers can sign up to have their bill automatically deducted from their bank account. They can choose to split the bill in half. We will actually split it in half for them and take half one month and half the second. This, we feel, will be beneficial for those customers on a fixed income. For example, a senior citizen that may get a $200 bill and wants to pay $100 when they get their Social Security check on the 1st, and the other $100 the following month on the 1st, they will have the ability to sign up and have that done automatically for them. That concludes my presentation.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. I can only imagine in these economic times you've got your work cut out for you, and it's pretty evident from looking at this report. I want to step back to the bills, notices, and disconnects, or maybe you can just answer it without looking at it, but 4,800 is what we're projecting for disconnects this year?
Correct.
All right. And how does that compare to other utilities? Are we aware of what other utilities are doing? Are they less than 1% as well?
As far as the percentage of bills that they send out, we did not do that comparison because some of them do bill monthly and some bill bi-monthly like we do. But we did compare other cities' disconnects as a percentage of their customers, and we are lower.
Yeah. And do we know how much lower or what percentages? Or
I have that information. I don't absolutely recall. Do you recall, Ned?
And is there an explanation as to why we're half or approximately half compared compared to the other utilities?
Well, let me just say, disconnects are not our priority service order in the morning. There are so many, and that's why measuring disconnects is very difficult, because it really has to do with manpower and other types of orders that you get in. We have 6 field technicians that work the whole city. Their priority is to turn new customers on when they move into the city of Glendale, to verify reads, to look at safety issues. They have many orders that they receive every day, and disconnects, honestly, is I don't want to say the filler, but it is not the priority order. So depending on how many of the other calls we get may determine how many disconnect orders that we actually issue. And I'm assuming it's the same for the other cities.
And the reason I raise it is it's been somewhat in the papers and other places as to, by certain candidates running for office and other things, that there's a large number of disconnects, but it doesn't really seem that that's an accurate representation of what's happening here in Glendale, at least. I was kind of surprised at some of the numbers I was hearing, but if it's less than 1%, and it seems to have trended that way at least back to 2006, we're in pretty good shape, at least customer service-wise.
If you look at it, we turn off on an average 25 customers per day. A lot of those customers throughout the year on the disconnect regularly. So we have a lot of repeat customers that are on the phone or in our office making a payment 5 minutes after they are disconnected and want to get turned back on right away. So it's to portray it as customers can't pay their bill is not really an accurate statement.
Looking back at 2007, then, since that was 2007, 2008, that was a complete year. Of the 4,300, are those 4,300 unique customers, or could those be duplicates, or some people have it turned off 2 or 3 times?
My best guess is that most of those are repeat customers, just based on my own experience. I don't have the numbers, but those are total disconnects. And like I said, when I review the disconnect list, a lot of the names are the same. Okay,
so for example, the 4,300, customer A could have had theirs turned off 3 or 4 times in a year, and that would have added to the total to the 4,300.
Yes.
Okay.
We actually have customers that are disconnected 6 times per year, and they get 6 bills per year.
All right.
I have a question. What percentage of our customer base are participating in these low-income programs?
The percentage I don't have. Craig Keenan may have the percentage. We just
roughly
got the number for these.
Have we seen a steady increase, or do we anticipate more?
Craig Keenan, PBC Marketing Manager. Regard to the senior group, probably close to.
Are participating?
About 45.
For the senior care.
Now, the New Glendale Care Program. Who is enrolled in the last company's program? We're looking at 1,000 applications.
Okay, and we're anticipating 15,000 for that one? Okay. And how are we doing the outreach on that?
Well, we've marketed in our newsletter. Processing that.
Freeze.
Why have to use that?
Well, not for me. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
On a follow-up to the Glendale Care, how are we funding this? Because I don't remember last year any presentation on the PBC budget. I mean, there's a budget, but it was more for the other programs rather than the Glendale Care. So.
Glendale Care, I believe, was
Okay. And that was just an additional percentage, or on? So what was the increase to the PBC budget for this Glendale Care program?
A fully Glendale.
That's the incremental cost.
Anywhere from it includes the senior. The other thing-
And do these have to reapply every year, or
We do
annually?
we will recertify on other occasions. Recertify.
You have to sit here.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry about that. Well, if you turn it from mute to on, it works better too. So, I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
One quick one if Commissioner Chan's finished.
Well, I'm sorry. I do have one more for the cool care. I see that the third bullet says $100 equal installments over 2 years.
Yes. That was recommended by a previous commission when we designed the program. They wanted us to have a co-payment. It adds up to about $8 a month for 2 years.
The customer pays.
Customer
us.
pays it on their bill. Actually, if you do the energy savings, they'll save a little bit more than $8 a month. So they're getting a new refrigerator, Energy Star refrigerator, and it shouldn't really affect their bill. In fact, their bill would still go down a little bit.
I see.
For participating in the program.
Okay, thank you.
What happens to a master meter customer? I mean, if a person doesn't get a bill, how does one participate in the refrigerator replacement?
In that case, the landlord can apply for it. If they show that the person in the apartment to get the refrigerator is low income, the landlord then can get.
But then the customer is responsible for the co-payment.
No, the landlord would be. We would charge it to their bill, the landlord's bill.
Oh, okay. But
or they just pay up front. Is normally what would happen. They would just pay the $100 up front.
okay, now that's good to know. But my question was really for the threshold requirement for Glendale Care.
Mm-hmm.
Is it similar to other utilities as well? Because that wasn't part of the presentation.
It's the same as the California investor-owned utilities, low-income care program.
Could you run that off so that a lot of people who might be watching can understand if they qualify or not?
But Tammy has that.
I think I have it. Okay, for a maximum household income, number of persons in the household for 1 to 2, it would be 30,500. For a three-member household, 35,800. For a 4-person household, 43,200. For a 5-person household, 50,600, and for a 6-person household, $58,000. And this is also on the web.
And that is updated every June 1st by the California Public Utility Commission, and then we adopt ours right after that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, one last question here. On the service level and the increase in the customer wait time by over 100% from 32 seconds to a minute and 16 seconds, what can we possibly do to reduce that, or is there any plan to reduce it, or can you comment on that?
Well, we've tried a few things. Last year, actually, I think, because as you know, we were experiencing some high vacancy rates last year as well. And what we ended up doing was cross-training both billing and credit and collection sections to assist with the customer calls. But then we dropped our service levels in other areas as far as getting our bills out in time and doing other work that we really have to do. So it's really been a balance between getting the revenue out, collecting the revenue, and providing good service levels. So unfortunately, this is about the best balance we can find. We're hoping that with the budget talks that are going on right now, we will get some relief with some of the vacancy issues that we're having.
Else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item.
Item 5, oral communications.
Believe we have any?
Item 6, old business.
Old business?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think 2 months ago in our last meeting, I was maybe making a request to Mr. Steiger about looking at this year's goal. I think we maybe want to look at what we want to accomplish for this year, not part of the strategic plan. But the items could be part of the strategic planning, but maybe specific goals for this year, maybe in terms of customer service or in terms of customer satisfaction or rates that we're trying to accomplish, maybe by 1% less this year instead of that 35% less in Edison. So those type of yearly goals, if we can maybe come back next meeting on what we're trying to do by the end of the year and how we're going to accomplish that. That'll be good. Thank you.
Any others? Next item.
Item number 7, new business.
I have one item, and that has to do with the federal stimulus funding. I'm not sure if GWP is pursuing any grant applications, energy efficiency funding or anything.
We are actually pursuing a number of different projects. The biggest single initiative that we're looking at right now is our smart grid. We have made application for matching funds. On smart grid, it's matching funds. And we're looking probably for somewhere around $15 million. We have about 10 other projects split between water and electric that we're also pursuing funding for. And then finally, there's the block grant efficiency that I think you're referring to, that we are doing in collaboration with the rest of the city. So we have a number of initiatives going on right now, and we're actively pursuing it. In fact, that's why I was in Washington last week for that very, very reason. I met with our 2 senators and our Representative Schiff, and explained all the projects and really emphasized the smart grid project.
So maybe when they're finalized, we can have a report to see
Sure.
what we got.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other new business?
Item 8, agenda forecast.
The new items for the agenda forecast.
So, Mr. President, I wanted to mention, I think it would be useful to indicate when the updates on the strategic plan goals monitoring would occur on the agenda forecast. And I wanted to ask if on the asset management report, is that for water only? Is it for both sides of the house?
Right now, that will be water only.
Okay. On your electric 5-year plan and the annual CIP, it would be useful if that also ties into your strategic planning to see what goals are being met. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
I have one item I'd like to add is, and I think we visited it in the past, but was the recycled water usage and where the city is with regard to recycled water, especially in light of the fact if we're going to go into mandatory rationing and some other things coming up this summer, I think it might be beneficial if we assess where we're at and have some kind of report on that.
Will do.
Also. And then also, the new rebates, those come out in June, probably? Tammy knows. Like rebates for refrigerators or windows, or are those an ongoing?
They're ongoing.
They're ongoing, okay. So if we can put that on maybe somewhere in the future, no particular date, it's kind of maybe an assessment of what we have or what options we have. I know we've seen it in the past, but sometimes it's helpful to see it again. Other items? Last item?
Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next meeting will be May 4th, 2009 at 4 p.m. Thank you, everybody.